Always love chopping up sports and the hobby with the next gentleman. It's not his first time. He's a veteran of Sports Card Nation, but he just made me aware it's been 3 years since I had him on. I did not realize that. That is bad on me. I apologize, but always love having him on. I consider him a good friend, not just someone I know in the hobby, fellow New Yorker, fellow writer. He's an author. I've never written a book before, so he's got me beat there. Professor, probably going to forget something. He's on other podcasts as well. So a man of many hats, Clemente Lisi. Welcome.
Hey, great to be back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I know. And you told me it's been 3 years. And I'm glad you did because I really didn't realize it was that long. So I've already promised them, everybody, that it won't be 3 years between from this airing to the next time he's on. It actually be next week, but even past that, we won't space it out 3 years. But man, you like I said, you wear a lot of hats, and you're right. You've written a book about the World Cup, which has been updated with it coming to U.S. soil this year. We'll talk about that as well. You just a great guy, a great very knowledgeable. You go to some of the shows. Being in New York, I'm biased, being originally from there, but that's the melting pot and the metropolis of sports and just everything really. And so always fun to talk about whatever we're talking about. So how's things?
They're good, and I think 2026 will be a very busy sports year and a very busy hobby year with the World Cup, with the Winter
Yeah,
Olympics,
and that's
and a lot of other stuff.
and soccer's your like you have more than one lane, but soccer is really a big lane for you. And so with the World Cup coming here on North American soil, it's going to be not only here in the U.S. but Mexico and Canada. We'll save a lot of that for later on. We'll start out with some hockey stuff, and I know you're on Puck Chuck with Sal Barry, and you cover hockey. I'm a huge Ranger fan. I'm gonna have to wear a bag over my head now. The way they're playing, it's been pretty bad. They can't score at home, but I do watch other games, Clemente, besides the Rangers. I mean, predominantly Rangers, and I've always been a hockey fan since I was even a little kid. While I'm a Ranger fan, I love hockey. I've always said this on the show and the people in conversation. Hockey's one of the best sports to see live, and it's still pretty good even to watch it not live on TV. And I try to watch all the Ranger games, but I also watch other teams play. And I'll say this, and you tell me if you agree with me. There's always superstars in any sport, but right now there's like a youth movement of superstars taking the forefront in the NHL. And I'll mention some of them. I know I'll leave someone off, but guys like, but obviously Connor Bedard, McDavid's not a spring chicken anymore, but still young. Celebrini, the Hughes brothers, Wyatt Johnson, Lane Hudson, Cale McCarr, Will Smith with San Jose, and again, there's Kiprasov. There's just the young talent that's now in the league and infused in the league. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always felt like before this, it always felt like you had like a few big stars, your Crosbys and Ovechkins and guys like that. But I think we're just seeing a lot more young talent kind of leading their teams. Well, what do you think of my assessment there? Am I off base? Has it always been like this, and maybe we're just noticing it more with more social media and more coverage?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think there's always been players that come into every league, the NHL being one of them. The issue is, though, a lot of them don't pan out. So if you look at the NHL, you mentioned McDavid, and before that, you have to go back a decade to Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin, right? So every 10 years, and after McDavid, 10 years later, you have Bedard, right? So every 10 years, you have that one player that becomes a symbol. But then you have others. And you mentioned Lane Hudson, who was having a great year last year, his rookie year. You have others, but Kale McCarr's a great example. He was super hot a couple of years ago with Colorado, and then now he's kind of cooled off. So these players kind of come and go. And you didn't mention Austin Matthews. He's not young either, or Jack Eichel. These are good players,
Yep. Yep.
and they're not super young. They've been in the league maybe now 5, 10 years, but a lot of potential there. I kind of measure them the way I would with in the hobby. Like they get super hot. Their rookie cards do, the young guns cards do, and then they kind of taper off unless they win a cup or something. And so the only constants you have in the league are Ovechkin and Crosby and McDavid because people want a sure thing. I mean, the hottest player to collect in the NHL, hockey card wise, is still Wayne Gretzky, right? And he's been retired
Yep.
a very, very long time. So people want sure things. They want to speculate, but at the same time, they want a sure thing. Now, the league has had a lot of young players. You mentioned a bunch of players who played for San Jose because they've been a pretty lousy team. So they get pretty high draft picks. Celebrini is one example. I think he's the real deal. I think Celebrini's a great player. We forget, as Ranger fans, and I put myself in that group too, we had Lafreniere, who there was a lot of hype behind
Yeah,
him.
speaking, yeah, hey, not to cut you off, but listen, speaking of guys that haven't lived up
Right,
to what the billing. I remember when they got that pick, and like they pretty much said that's
right,
that was a big thing as a Ranger fan. We're gonna have our own kind of young gun, not to
right,
steal up or but a guy that can light the lamp and be exciting to watch, and he's he had the last year he sort of made strides, and this year he's regressed again, and he's even being talked about being
right.
traded, and I don't even know what like his market would bring him on the trade market now. Like you're not going to get what maybe you once could, and we had with the second pick we had Capo Caco, who I love. I
Right.
still one of my favorite guys, but
Yeah.
just maybe it's the bright lights in New York, as they say.
Right.
Um, but he went. We traded him to Seattle, and he played better there than he did wearing the blue shirts. And is there something to that with playing in a big city like New York?
Yeah, I think you see that with a lot of athletes, including baseball players, like on Yankees and the Mets and all these other, big teams where guys come in and it is a pressure cooker because not only do you have the fans, but you have the media in New York, which is relentless. New York is still a three newspaper town. Some cities don't even have one newspaper. New York still, has three in the city and one on Long Island Newsday. So you have four newspapers covering you, all the TV stations. I mean, I remember the hype around Lafreniere. He could never live up to the hype. I mean, he's a third line guy and whatever, but the hype was always going to be exceed what he can do, right? And so the Rangers traditionally like to pick up players, you know, like 10 years later. So I always joke with my
Yeah,
friend
the
Sal. Yeah, yeah,
Gretzky and the
yeah,
tail in his career,
yeah.
Yager and
Right,
the
right.
Lindros, like
Messier,
yeah.
Lindros.
Oh
So I,
no,
I
Messier's
yeah,
my guy. Like, listen, he
right.
brought us the
Yeah, of
last
course.
cup, which who
But he
knows
wasn't
when
young.
that'll happen
He wasn't
again. We
young.
may not.
Yeah.
I hope we live to see it, Clemente. The
No, it's
next,
true.
the ne-
But
you
I
know,
joke with my friend Sal. I say, Connor Bedard, he'll be a Ranger in about 12 years. Like, and I can
or
see that,
McDavid at the end.
or
You
McDavid
know,
in the last 2 years when nobody wants him, and it'll be great. Maybe you'll win a cup, maybe you won't. I mean, we forget the '94 Rangers were basically a rethread of the Oilers. A lot of them were, and it worked. And and they caught lightning in a bottle. They won the cup. It was amazing. I mean, the Rangers celebrate 100 years this year. They're one of the original six teams. It's a story team, a story franchise, but they haven't had the best of luck recently. And oftentimes you want to rebuild. I find in the NHL, it's almost easier to be a newer team. Look at the Golden Knights, for example, or look at Tampa, or look at Florida,
yeah,
or look. These teams have won the cup multiple times. They're very good. They're able to start fresh. And then you look at like we complain as Ranger fans, but look at the Maple Leafs. They haven't won anything
yeah,
since '67, and they have a great fan base, a great hockey
yeah. They're a
culture.
storied franchise.
Right, right. They have great
Like you
players that come
show
and
that
go.
logo to people who aren't even hockey fans, and they'll probably say like Toronto Maple Leaf. I know that's the
Right,
Toronto Maple Leafs.
right.
So yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So what I'm saying is the pedigree isn't enough. You need to bring in the right combination, the right coach. And maybe Toronto, like New York, there's just a lot of eyeballs on them, a lot of pressure, and a lot of young guys tend to just not to wilt under that pressure. If you're Celebrini and you're in San Jose, well, it's a different kind of market. Not everyone, even if everyone in San Jose cared, it still wouldn't be a ton of people. And so you have time to make mistakes and to grow. And so that's the advantage those franchises have. And I think New York doesn't. In New York, the Rangers, the Islanders, same thing. It doesn't afford that kind of luxury. I think ultimately, and the players suffer, and ultimately they want to go somewhere else, like a medium sized market, like I'm thinking like a Columbus, Blue Jackets, or a Nashville Predators or Carolina Hurricanes. Those are places you can kind of build a team over time. It can take 10 years. People in New York don't have that kind of patience, even though New York hasn't won the
I
cup since
don't.
'94.
I'll speak for myself.
Yeah,
I don't, right?
yeah,
And it's you don't realize like that 94 cup, that's 32 years ago. That's
yeah.
crazy
It's a lot.
to me. And if you would have told me in 94, Clemente, I was 22 when they won that cup, poured, watched that game with some friends, poured beer over each other like we were players ourselves. If you would have told me that night, right, beating Vancouver, Messier, holding that cup, if you would have told me that 32 years later, we still wouldn't have won another one since, I would have thought you're nuts. And not only is that the case, but we're not even close right now the way we're playing. And we can make this a whole Rangers podcast. I'm not a big fan of Chris Drury, the GM. We mentioned players not panning out, right? But there's a guy that drafts those guys and makes those trades. And I don't think he's pushed all the right buttons, but it's scary to think like when I'm in my 50s now. Will I live to see another Rangers Cup? And I think we get spoiled too because 2 years ago we won the President's Trophy, most points in the regular season. We made a run and then had a serious drop off the last couple years. We have going through coaches. Maybe it's not the coaching. Maybe it goes above the coaching and that sort of thing. So, as a fellow Ranger fan, I'm sure a lot of that probably resonates with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, New York in general hasn't won a championship in quite a while. If you look at the Knicks, another great example. Our MSG co-dwellers, they haven't won anything. The Mets and even the Yankees, right? They got the World Series and lost, and no one's going to stop the Dodgers the last couple of years. So New York has been a bit of a drought when other cities like Boston and Philadelphia, that we consider our big rivalries on the East Coast, right? They've enjoyed more success in football, and I mean, look at the Giants and the Jets. I mean, they've been terrible for years now. I know you're a Steelers fan, and you're coming off a playoff loss, and you're not gonna,
We'll do a whole nother show. I'm not
yeah,
going to, but we can do a whole nother show
yeah, and
there
I'm
as
sure you
well.
saw the whole story about
Yeah. Oh yeah.
the final weekend when they beat Baltimore. That was amazing, but all the holy
Yeah,
water in
we
the
had to
world
listen.
was,
Even
yeah,
that game, Clemente, we had to rely on
yeah,
a missed 40-yard
yeah.
field goal, which is a chip shot in today's NFL. Like that
It
was a
is. You're
shock that he missed it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, did
So
we earn it, or did we sort of back our way in and then look like you
right.
know when we played the Texans, we looked like we probably shouldn't have been there. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so
So
and
and
now we're gonna
that's
have a
yeah.
new coach. You
Right,
know,
exactly, and then you start from scratch, and you keep hoping, and Steelers are another storied franchise, right? So it's that kind of thing. I mean, look, sometimes championships happen when you least expect them. I mean, for the Rangers to stay on that topic this season, it's not going to happen.
yeah.
Maybe the goal is to make the playoffs. You never know.
And
In
that's
hockey,
sad to me. You mentioned like it's the centennial season.
right?
They're doing all sorts of event
They
at
are.
the
Yeah.
Garden. They're bringing a lot of the legends back. They're doing a lot of stuff with like first responders and
Yes.
police protecting services type of thing and stand up to cancer. And we just look so horrible on the ice, especially at home. Even worse at home. Usually
Yeah.
it's the opposite, right? We
Sure.
play better at home and worse on the road. We're the opposite of that, which makes no
And
sense
I hope the
to
GM and
me.
I hope the GM, the management realize when they get to the trade deadline that maybe they have to make some real moves, spend some real money, bring in some players. They tried this before; it hasn't quite worked out. In the last couple of years, at the trade deadline, they bring in a superstar, and then it kind of doesn't work out.
Yeah,
So, look, anything can happen. I mean, in the NHL is one of those leagues where there's a lot of parity, and then you never know an eighth seed like the Florida Panthers a few years back could get to the Stanley Cup Finals, right? Like you don't need to be a number one seed. You won the President's Trophy, and often that's bad. I mean, look at the Bruins a couple of years back. They were gone, right? So you never know in the playoffs. Any system that has playoffs in it, you just never know. You just want to get in the playoffs and then see what happens. And maybe you get hot. You need a hot goaltender. And look, Shesterkin
Yeah,
is a great goaltender. I
and
mean,
that's the we
that's the
have a
annoying
great,
part.
and we're sort of like wasting that. You know what I mean? I
Yes,
almost feel like that window gets every season we don't win a cup with him
right,
between the pipes. Right? Is that window gets tighter? Plus, it's got to be frustrating for him. He's standing on his head, playing out of his mind, and we're losing two to
right,
one or three
yeah.
to two
Well, they won't
because
score
we
enough
can't
goals. Yeah,
score
they can't
because
score.
we
Right,
can't score. So like I could see him at some point going, his agent going to Drury, whoever might be the GM, and say, "Get my guy out of here." Like, let's segue in a little bit. Talk about a guy you mentioned, Clemente and Connor McDavid. You know what I mean? He's probably the best player in hockey. He doesn't have a Stanley Cup now. He's been to two, and they ran into Florida both times, right?
right.
Um, he's the best player on the ice, but he didn't win the cup. He didn't play bad, but we can make an argument. This goaltender, not to point the finger at one guy, but Skinner
Oh yeah,
did not play well in both of those Stanley Cup. I always tell my Ranger friends, if not that I want Shesterkin to be there, but if Shesterkin was on the Oilers in those two cups, I know they probably won at least one of them, if
yeah.
not both. They at least split one of those series, if not both, and there would be a much better team overall. And as much it would hurt, like to trade him, but as a fan, the guy's doing everything in his power. I know he's hurt at the moment, but like you root for guys like that. If it's a choice where he wastes away on the Rangers and never gets to hoist the Stanley Cup, I could be selfish as a fan and say, yeah, that's fine by me. Or I could say, hey, we could trade him to Edmonton, maybe get some draft picks and a couple young players and reload and rebuild, and he gets to get a ring there. I'm not, maybe that's not the worst thing in the world for all parties, but it's so hard to say. Obviously, I want him to win, hoist the cup wearing, red, white, and blue jersey, ideally in Madison Square Garden. But like you said, it's just you can be the best team in the President's Cup, President Trophy winner. It doesn't mean you're just going to skate out there and they're going to give you the game. You gotta still win the game. So, and speaking of McDavid, kind of I went off on a tangent, brought it back to the ring. Speaking of McDavid, there's a guy who's no one really will argue he's the current best player in the game. Doesn't have a cup, got close. If he never wins, when his career said and done, he never wins the cup. How differently will fans and hobbyists look at him, or not? Will he sort of be the exception to the rule?
Yeah, generally, I'm a big believer that you need to win a championship. But I think in McDavid's case, he could become the exception. And that's because the numbers he puts up just as an individual are staggering, and the hobby has responded to that. I mean, look at all the McDavid rookie years, the young guns, even though there's tons of them and they've been graded in the thousands, they still command a premium as other rookie cards do. His autographs. I mean, everything McDavid is valuable, worth a lot. It's when I go to the expo in Toronto, generally I go every fall. Other than Gretzky, he's the one you see everywhere. Him and Crosby, and so those are the constants. So yeah, now Crosby won a cup. Ovechkin has won a cup. The thing with McDavid would be interesting if Canada were to win, let's say, a gold medal, right? Then it could be because the other it's an exception, but it has happened where being really good, putting up great numbers, and winning an Olympic gold medal will get you into the Hall of Fame because it's not the NHL Hall of Fame, it's the Hockey Hall of Fame. And so Henrik Lundqvist, for example, did those things. He never won a cup in New York. If anyone deserved the cup, it was Lundqvist, right? He didn't win a
Yeah.
cup. He won a gold medal with Sweden. He put up great numbers, and he was a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame. So there's no way McDavid isn't a shoe-in given the numbers he
Yeah,
put up.
he's a Hall of Fame. He's a
Yeah,
Hall of Cup or no cup. He's
right.
he's
And on
definitely
top of that, yeah, he was MVP of the playoffs one year. The year they lost, he was MVP of the series. even though
Yep.
they lost.
Yep.
So that
Yep.
doesn't happen all the time. So he transcends that. And so he's a Hall of Famer the day he retires. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But I would love to see him win a cup because it would just kind of come full circle, especially when you lose two of them in a championship.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. If the Rangers aren't going to win the cup, I sort of root for McDavid to get that first one. But because by all accounts, he's a decent guy. He's not a big show boater or trash talker. Just kind of plays, does his talking with his play. Just an incredible play. Even watching him, and I don't watch a ton of him, being he's on the West Coast, but I see enough of him. You don't have to watch much to realize just how much better he is than a lot of the players in the league. Who do you think? We got Crosby and Ovechkin, two of the greatest ever to lace them up. They're on their, the back nine, if you will, of the careers. If I asked you, Clemente, in your opinion, McDavid right now is the best player in hockey, but if you took out Crosby and Ovechkin out of the equation, who's the next guy
I think it's Austin
after?
Matthews. Austin Matthews, I think, is that next guy. But again, he's an American. He's playing in Toronto. You know, is he going to win a cup? He needs to put up individual numbers. Whenever you look at who's breaking records, it's still McDavid, it's still Ovechkin, it's still Sidney Crosby because of longevity. They've been playing for so long. So when you play for a long time, you put up numbers. Just it's a matter of and to play 20 years is staggering considering hockey is a contact sport. I mean, guys play 10. If you have a 10-year NHL career, that's considered amazing. It's like the NFL. When you're playing 20, 25 years, the curious thing is, will something happen with McDavid? Will he go to a different team? Will he finish his career with the Oilers? He may not. If he doesn't win a cup there, he may want to go somewhere else. And there was a little talk this year, or last year, I should say. There was a contract dispute, and people were, rumors about is he going to leave? And then, of course, he stayed. But I think Austin Matthews is that guy. And then after that, I have to say it is Connor Bedard. At least that's the promise, the hope. He's had a couple of, he won Rookie of the Year, he won the Calder. Last year was okay. But again, he's on a franchise, the Blackhawks, where they've been in rebuilding mode for quite a while now. And at some point, either they really rebuild or he's going to be a free agent and is going to want to leave and say, I want to go on a team that doesn't need, you know, 8, 9 parts, just needs 1 or 2 because I want to win a cup. And so the great thing about Bedard is he puts up numbers because he gets a lot of ice time. He plays a lot. But I remember I went to see him play at the Garden his rookie year. And I also interviewed Connor Bedard a couple of years ago at the rookie showcase that the NHL has every year in Washington before the season starts. And he's a fairly small guy. And so the hope is you got to put some muscle and meat on this guy. He's only been in the league 2, 3 years, and hopefully he can come into his own. But the way Bedard plays is pretty amazing. I mean, his shot, his speed, he's the complete deal. Like he's gotten a lot of hype, both hobby hype and hype in general. But I think it's deserved, and I think Celebrini after him
It's funny you
could
mention him because I was about
could
to
yeah,
ask you.
yeah,
They're sort of compared to each other now.
yes,
Similar ages, similar situations with young teams that
yes,
have a bunch of like high picks, even after they were high picks
yes,
themselves. And I've had this discussion with other hockey fans. Like, some will say Connor Bedard is better than Celebrini, and then someone else will say Celebrini is better than Bedard. Like, kind of, where do you? And here's my thing: you don't even. They're both very good players, and they both have a chance to be great players. I don't know why we have to have this debate, especially this early in their careers as well. But kind of, what's your take when you look at both of these guys in similar circumstances?
yeah. So Bedard has a couple of years on him in the league, so that's helpful. But you're right; the circumstances are very similar. They're number one picks coming on teams that already had bad seasons and other young players and other young picks. So the scenario is similar. I do think that people that say that Celebrini is better than Bedard, they do that to provoke Bedard fans. And there's a lot of them out there because if you go to a card show, you go to a game, there's a lot of people with Bedard jerseys. Because as soon as he came into the league, I think the league was like, we got to market this guy because the NHL needs all the marketing help they can get. It's still the number 4 sport in North America, maybe even number 5 or 6 if you consider soccer and MMA and auto racing and all that other stuff. So the NHL has to gravitate and make superstars out of young players. And the big comparison is Sidney Crosby. He does play a lot like Crosby. So in that sense, I do think that Bedard is a little bit better. It doesn't mean that Celebrini doesn't, blow up and San Jose gets really good and they win a cup or something. Then that helps. I mean, it helps to have that, championship energy around you. But right now, I think they're about even. And so we'll see if the Blackhawks or San Jose, which team does better, or if they eventually leave those franchises and go somewhere else. I can see that happening. I mean, there's nothing that says Bedard has to be in Chicago the rest of his life, and same for Celebrini. So we'll see. We'll see when their contracts are up. It's a couple of years from now,
Well,
but
listen, maybe
they're pretty even.
maybe we'll be cheering. Maybe we'll be cheering him on in wearing Ranger jerseys. I'm
You
not
never
opposed
you
to that.
never know. But if you talk about hobby hype, the hype around Bedard, I've never seen anything like that. So I haven't been on this show in quite a while, as you
Yeah,
mentioned. And in that entire time I was not on the show, there was Bedard mania all over the place. I mean, to the point where I've
yeah,
never seen, the prices of his Young Guns card went up to $1,200 like the first week it came out, which is ridiculous because now it's
yeah,
settled out. It's about $300, which is probably where it should have been from day one. But what I'm saying is, people that never collected hockey, never cared about hockey players, they know who Bedard is, and they know Ovechkin,
yeah,
and they know McDavid, and they know Sidney Crosby. But that's all they know, and they know Bedard is in that pantheon. Whether it's deserved or not, whether or not that fizzes out, we'll see. But people still want Bedard cards. I mean, they still care, and maybe because the Nationals in Chicago a lot, there's a lot of Bedard mania, in Chicago, and there is at the expo generally, and you can tell if people are holding on to Bedard now because he kind of cooled off last year, and people are like, you know what, I'm not going to sell Bedard because it's too low. I'm going to hang on to him. Hope he has a great season, puts up, you know 80, 90, 100 points, and then I'm going to put it back in my showcase and charge top dollar for his rookie year cards, and people are going to gravitate to them. So if you go to shows and you don't see Bedard, it's because people are hanging on to them. They're like, you know what, he's low now. I can't put him out there. And so there's the speculation on
yeah.
him,
Listen,
even though it's 3 years, people are
yeah.
still playing this game with Bedard. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, one more question, hockey, and then we're getting into some soccer here with the World Cup approach. And I know you write some about this, so you may have covered this in an article. But obviously Bedard stuff isn't cheap, even though it's got room. The ceiling's not necessarily reached. If someone asked you, like, "Hey, what young player is just way too undervalued? I should probably buy some, put some away." Maybe the answer is Bedard, or is there someone else in your opinion, like for what he's eventually going to, what in your opinion, what he's going to be as a player? Like, his cards are way too cheap, and I don't want to ruin it if you're doing that, but like, hey, this is a guy I would like buy and just forget that I bought it and put it in a box and see what happens. Who kind of checks that box in your mind?
Yes, so there's Matvey Michkov of the Flyers. He was hot when he first came out, but then didn't do a whole lot. So he's kind of cooled off. And Philadelphia's a good hockey market, but it's not the kind of thing that's national. So I think Michkov is one of those players. Should Celebrini have a great year and the Sharks have a great year, then I think Will Smith will also naturally grow because he's on a team, a young guy too, who I think, is undervalued at the moment. Players like Lane Hudson, for example, may be overvalued because a lot of speculation on him. He's not having a great season. So, you know, he reminds me a little bit of Adam Fox of the Rangers. Super hot coming out of the gate. A couple of years in, it's like cool off time. So who knows? Someone like Lane Hudson, it doesn't help. We talk about in football cards, everyone wants to collect quarterbacks. Nobody really wants to speculate on rookies who are defensemen, not really, or goaltenders. They want guys who score goals, right? And
Yeah,
so it doesn't help when, you know, Mikhail Makar wins a Stanley Cup or wins a Rookie of the Year or something. People are like, oh, it's a defenseman, or Lane Hudson, or an Adam Fox, or these kind of players. So I would say don't speculate on these guys because that their value will go up and down super quick. Mitchkov is a forward. He's going to score goals, so you want to put your money on someone like that. And Will Smith, same thing. forward. He can score goals, and he pairs really nicely with Celebrini sometimes. And so those are the kind of players I'm looking at. But then there's other players that could emerge because hockey's a little different than the other sports. You got guys coming in from Europe, from Sweden
Yep.
and Finland and Germany and all over the place, and guys pop up all of a sudden, and then you have now this kind of growing trend where a lot of these guys who play junior hockey in Canada are like, why should I play AHL and make $600 a game when I can go play college hockey and do an NIL deal or something? And so college hockey might get better as a result of that. And college hockey is okay. And a lot of decent Americans come out of there, but college hockey could get better because players want to make some real money and want to get some real deals, and then they can jump and get drafted. So, it's interesting. I mean, you kind of have to, but generally, the hobby gravitates towards the superstars who are established. We know this. And so, what always bothers me is that there's always two or three guys everyone wants, and then everyone else's values are not good. Like a Jack Eichel. This guy's value should be great. He played in Buffalo. Okay, he played for a team that was, in a bad market. They're having a good year now, but okay, he goes to Vegas. They win the Stanley Cup. It doesn't matter. No one's a Jack Eichel player collector. No one's looking for Jack Eichel. Or Austin Matthews, same thing. Maybe because he's an American playing in Toronto. Okay, in Toronto he's hot. Everywhere else, not so much. That always bothers me that there's room in the hobby for more than Gretzky, McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby. That's it. That's really it. And then maybe Bedard.
Yeah.
And that's it. And nobody, I mean, you're a dealer, you wear many hats.
Yeah. Yeah.
People, if they ask you about hockey and they're not really hockey guys, they'll ask you for three. You probably get the
Yeah.
same. Do you have any
Yep.
Bedard? Do you have any Ovechkin? Do you have any McDavid or Gretzky? There's four guys.
Yeah.
So that's always
Yeah.
troublesome. So to me, I
It's like
always say,
it's like basketball,
yeah,
it's like Jordan, LeBron, and
right.
Kobe.
Yeah, I mean,
You know
Jordan
what
is
I
like
mean? Like,
Gretzky.
yeah,
He's been
yeah.
retired for
And I get
forever.
that. I'm not trying to
I
say,
get it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
think about yeah, and think about, I mean, you know, I think the idea is collectors should definitely stretch what they collect, what they want. And I understand not every card could have the values those cards have because there just isn't enough money in the hobby potentially for people to want all that. And then if someone wins the cup, it goes up. But what I generally try to do is say, you know what, OPG's coming out and they have marquee rookies. I'm going to try to collect the whole set or the whole marquee rookie set just so I have the rookies of that year because you just never
yeah,
know how got go from a dollar box could go into a showcase. And this happened
yeah,
a couple of years back with the goaltender Jordan Binnington, right? He was like
yeah,
a dollar. His Young Guns card was like $1. Then they won the Stanley Cup, and it was like $60, $80, and now it's back to probably $1. But you know what I mean? Like, so it's a wild swing. So if you're in it just to collect like I am, then it doesn't matter. I don't care if it's worth a
yeah,
dollar or
yeah,
$800. I want that card. I like that player.
yeah,
I care about it. If you're looking to buy and sell, then you have to make these moves quick. And so that's,
yeah,
those are a couple of names I look at. But, I've gone to the rookie showcase last couple of years. I write about it for Sports Collectors Digest. And that way we're colleagues because we both write for the same
yeah,
magazine. And it's always fun to see these players up close. And, you know, I mean, Tom Brady a couple of years ago at a Fanatics Fest, the first one, and I was there for the first one. He basically said any athlete, even if they're not that good, if they're playing professional, they're in the 1% of the 1%.
oh yeah,
And when I see these guys on the
yeah,
ice, I'm like, maybe these rookies, some of them won't make it, but these guys are amazing. And
yeah,
I think we lose sight of that because we're so starstruck by the
yeah,
3, 4, 5 guys. Everyone's looking for Mount
yeah,
Rushmore, but there's a lot
yeah.
of players out there to look at, and that's what I'm getting at.
Well, it's a Mount Rushmore because you can only get 3 or 4 guys up
Yeah,
there.
I
That
get it.
doesn't mean they're the only ones that are good, but
Right.
it's a great point by you, Clemente, right? Like, anyone that's playing professional sports, it's
Yeah.
not easy to do. Like you said, it's probably less than, quite frankly, it's less than 1%. That's just
Yeah.
how you have to round up to the 1%, so
Right.
it's a full number. But it's crazy, right? And especially hockey too. Like football, it's a pretty heavy contact sport, so one bad injury can end it potentially, end a career or change a career. Even we've seen players who've gotten hurt and they've come back, but maybe they're not quite the same player they were even before the injury, right? And that happens in other sports as well. So, but I just to me, I'll close with this, and then we're going to definitely get into soccer here. I've watched hockey for, like I said, 40 years, like legitimately, where I know what I'm watching, and I just seems like the last few years I've never seen this much young talent across the board, like in the league on almost every team, right? Even the teams that may be not playing well standings wise, they have like a budding. I'll say it like that, a budding potential superstar that's playing pretty well. And you mentioned Bennington going from the bargain box to out of the bargain box. We got a guy we've already spoke about, right? When Lafreniere first hit,
Yeah,
right, his stuff was going for $300 as Young Guns, right?
yeah,
We both know that's not even close anymore. And if things
right.
don't change, and I hope they do, because he's a Ranger at the moment, and I want him to play well. But if things don't change, you get that thing for $5-10 at some point. If that happens, that's crazy to think where that card once was in the
Yeah,
hobby space to where it might wind up if things don't trend in a positive direction. But you pointed that out, right? Things can go. It's a two-way street. Things can go one way or back the
or
other
down.
way,
Yeah.
or and sometimes it happens to the same player, right?
Yes.
And so I'm hoping. I get jealous too when the Islanders get the number one pick and they pick Schaefer and
Yeah.
he looks like the real deal, and I'm like, why couldn't we hit with a pick,
Yeah.
and it's frustrating sometimes, but I'm not going to change. I'm always be a Ranger fan through thick or thin. I'm just hoping it's not another 32, or 50-year wait from
Right.
when we won it from '94 to the time before that. But I won't be around if it's 50 years anyway. So all right, let's get into some soccer talk. Coming to the United States, Mexico, and Canada, the first time that it's going to be in three countries at the same time. You mentioned to me before it's the most it's ever been is two. The field expanding from 32
To
to
48.
48 teams, which means more games. Um, let me soccer is right in your wheelhouse. Do you like these changes with the expansion and more teams in the more countries in the field?
It's a good question. My fear is that you may be watering down the event by bringing in countries that maybe are not going to be able to hold. And we'll find out if we get a couple lopsided scores in the group stage. We'll see. Now the rationale is, the World Cup is for everybody, and it is fun to see countries who haven't qualified in 50 years or 60 years or maybe ever qualify. So that is fun. Like for example, Haiti is qualified for the World Cup, and they haven't qualified since 1970, and they've only played in one World Cup. So it's huge. It's a huge thing for a country that's in a lot of turmoil at the moment. So and you have a lot of Haitian Americans. So for them, it's a sense of pride. It's huge. But are they going to lose 7-0 to Brazil in the group stage, and people are going to be like, "What are they doing here?" And so
Yeah,
that's the push pull. And for example, FIFA wants more countries from around the world to be at the World Cup. So they want more countries from Africa and Asia and South America, and that's great. But the number of European countries hasn't really moved up much. So, for example, you could see Haiti at the World Cup, and there's still four teams that need to qualify for the World Cup. And one of those four that could qualify in those four spots that come March is Italy. We could have a World Cup without Italy in it, which would be a huge kind of loss.
that's insane to me.
Yeah,
Now I'm
and
half Italian, and I
right.
know you're like
Yeah,
that's.
yeah,
I actually didn't even real. I'm not just to
yeah,
show you how much I know,
yeah.
Clemente. I just assumed they were in the field already.
No, they're not. And so Italy hasn't qualified for the last two World Cups, which is already a staggering thing,
Yeah,
considering it's a four-time world champion and it's a country shaped like a boot. So they have no choice but to be a soccer powerhouse. But also I remember 94 World Cup and 94, I'm sure you remember, New York hosted, the old Giant Stadium hosted games,
yeah.
including the famous Italy Ireland game,
Yep.
right? And so, which Italy lost 1-0, and all my Irish fans remind me of that every day. But you had Italy playing training in New Jersey. You have a huge Italian American community. So not having in Italy, for example, could hurt the tournament. And then you have Uzbekistan who's in for the first time. People are like, why? Why do we have this? Now I understand it's also a political thing, FIFA to maintain its power. Every FIFA member gets one vote in the presidential election. So the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, which a lot of people may have heard that name because he's become like Trump's best friend. He's always at the White House and they're always hanging out. They have like a bromance going. He wants to get elected. He knows that Italy gets the same number of votes as Haiti. They get one vote each. And so it does help to it's like the electoral college of FIFA. It's nice to dole out, you know, World Cup spots to countries that are smaller or that never been in the World Cup before because they'll vote for you. And so that's a power thing internally.
So
Eh,
he'll just say like this team's in. Don't you have to
No, no,
like
it's a qualifying process, but the qualifying
yeah,
process could be tipped by saying, "Hey, Latin America, you have 10 countries in Latin America. We'll give you instead of 3 spots, we'll give you 7." So literally
right,
almost everybody it's like everybody makes the playoffs kind of thing. And
yeah.
just so you know, and the listeners know, there's 204 FIFA members, 204, and only 32 went to the World Cup before. Now only
Yeah.
48 make it, but still 204. So do the math. A lot of teams don't make the World Cup, right?
So there'll
So
be approximately 160
that don't make
countries
the World Cup,
that aren't
and
participating that want to
yeah,
be.
and when those countries not participating are, I don't know, Tunisia, which they're in the World Cup, but let's say, which is in Africa, let's say they
Yeah,
don't make the World Cup, no one's really going to notice, but people in that country. But if Italy doesn't make the World Cup, or in Argentina or
yeah.
Brazil, it's noticeable. It's people are going to notice that, and so I'm sure FIFA wants Italy in there because, and I don't want to harp on Italy. It's become a big controversy now. It's going from
Well, let
64
me ask
games
you
to
this:
140.
why they can still qualify?
They
Why
can,
don't we know like in the USA's group? There's still one more team to be
yes,
announced.
yes,
Why are there still? Why don't we know the full 48 now? Like, why isn't it?
because
You
what
know what
they
I
did,
mean?
yeah, because the qualifying ended in November, and then they had a World Cup draw in December, which I'm sure a lot of people watched. And the issue with that was, oh, we still have to play kind of a playoff, like a play-in. Look, it's to create more, it's to create more drama, to have more teams qualifying, and you have to expand the qualifiers. And because in soccer, national teams are not the only game in town. Most players are earning their money on club teams. Real Madrid, Barcelona,
Yeah.
Juventus, AC Milan. That's where the game is actually played on the club level. The national teams is like the Olympics. This is a kind of a special kind of thing. So you pointed out correctly. The US is in Group D with Paraguay, Australia, and then it says the winner of UEFA Path C. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? So there's 4 teams vying to become that one team. All indications point that it will be Turkey. Now they could be upset and they can lose. If Turkey gets into that group, the US group will be, I think the US got a pretty good group. I think it's a pretty easy group for the US considering they could have gotten some tough teams like
Let me ask you
Norway.
this: how are the groups? Who decides it's U.S., Paraguay, Australia,
Yeah.
and let's say
So,
Turkey is the? How
yeah.
does that? Is it like? Is it random? Is it
Yeah, so it's
not?
it's a good point. So there's something called the FIFA rankings that come out every month, which are a little bit like tennis rankings, a little bit like college football rankings. Every month, based on results, they rank the teams. The top 8 teams are the group leader. Okay, so for example, like a Brazil, a Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Spain, and then you have Mexico, Canada, and the US. Those teams cannot play each other in the group stage. They can only meet in a knockout round because they're really good. You wouldn't want to put Spain and Germany in the same
So
group because
they're trying to create parity. That way,
exactly, exactly. And
you
then
don't
and then
have
what
three powerhouses in one group beating each other up.
exactly. And then you
Yeah.
right, because it's better for the show to have the better teams not in the knockout stage. Then you have what teams that are in pot 2, pot 3, and pot 4. So what every group is put together, the US is pot 1 and they come out. Then pot 2 is like a Paraguay, a Morocco, Japan, whatever. Then you pull them out and so you end up with So it's orchestrated. Now, when the World Cup was smaller, there was a possibility that you could get a tough group. But the more teams that are in it and the more parity you create, the more watered down it becomes. So, for example, it doesn't mean that on paper Germany can win their group, but who knows? They could be an upset and they lose to Ecuador, which is the same group as Germany, and there's an upset that could happen. But you have in Group E with Germany, you have a team, small island in the Caribbean called Curacao. They're at the
Yep.
World Cup for the first time. It's a tiny country. This is the same country that Wayne Gretzky mispronounced Caraco during the World Cup draw, which was kind of hilarious. And I was
I
actually at the
believe Andrew Jones might be from
Curacao.
there or some.
Curacao,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I don't know. There is a baseball player I think that
Yeah,
came out.
yeah, they're good at baseball. It's a former Dutch colony. It's a
Yeah,
vacation spot for many people. It's a country that people have never heard of, and they're like, "Wow, they're at the World Cup." Yes, and Italy might not be there, but
yeah.
Curacao is there, so don't worry, rest assured.
And here's
But
the thing, like you, not to cut you off too,
yeah,
Clemente. Like you mentioned, like I know Italy missed the last couple World Cups.
yeah,
They can make this one,
yeah,
but why do we not know yet? Like when the BCS college football like releases the 16 teams in the playoff, they're all released at one time. Here it is.
yeah.
College World Series. Everyone's playing. Here's the field now. You got out of the regional. Why is it not all known at once?
Because what normally happens is the qualifiers end in November of the year before the World Cup, and then in December there's the draw, which happened, right? In December we had the draw,
Yeah,
but because there's more teams qualifying, there wasn't enough time to get all these
yeah,
teams in. So what ended up happening is FIFA was like, okay, Europe, you will have your playoffs, the best second place teams, because only the group winners of the qualifiers qualified automatically. The best number two teams were thrown in this pot where they had to basically fight it out. And so they're like, you're
yeah,
going to play in March because FIFA has what they call international windows. There's one in September, one in October, one in November, one in March, one in April. They have to spread this out. So unfortunately, now when I talk to the Panini people, for example, this tripped them up because Panini was like, we were ready to put our sticker book in January if we could. This Panini Stickers World Cup
yeah,
book, which is super popular. But they're like, we can't do that. We have to wait until at least
yeah,
April or May because we need to figure out which four teams are left and then get them in the book. Now, if you're Panini, you probably already have there's
the
four
teams
teams
that
that
are
make it,
in.
but there's like 16 teams left. I'm sure they've created
Yeah,
pages for all of them, and then they're just going to throw out the ones that don't make it
yeah,
and put the ones that. But that
yeah,
delayed because the people at Panini America are like, people love the sticker book. It would have been awesome to have the book out in December or January, and now we have to wait. And so it tripped up
yeah.
Panini as well, and then trips up Panini Prism, which is a big World Cup set people want to collect. You have to wait until the World Cup or maybe even after the World Cup to be able to sell this box because you want to be able to get those teams in there too. So it does hurt in terms of cards
Is it
and
a
collect.
going back to what happens on the pitch? Is it a disadvantage to a team that qualifies late, or an advantage, or neither?
It's a disadvantage because you're in pot four. So for example, Italy could have ended up in the Germany group. If let's say Italy qualifies, they could have ended up in the Germany group or in the Spain group. Now,
Yeah,
luckily, they could end up in the Canada group, which is super interesting because Canada's first game and Canada is a co-host. Canada would play. It would be Canada, Italy, in Toronto. Now that would be an amazing game considering how many Italians live in Toronto. But
yeah,
Italy has to qualify. It could be another country, and then it's like, okay, that's not going to happen. So that Canada that Canada versus blank team game, a lot of people the ticket prices are going up on that because it's Canada, yeah, and they're home, sure, but
and
people are
they're
speculating it
speculating
could
that
be
it should
Italy.
be
It,
Italy.
it should be Italy, could be Italy, and Italy, Canada. So Italy if Italy were to qualify, they would get a pretty easy group because they'd be in a group with Canada and Canada, with Qatar and Switzerland. That's a pretty easy group for a team that just snuck in. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? As opposed to like, oh, you're in the Spain group with Uruguay and Saudi Arabia. It's like,
yeah,
oh, this gets complicated. They could have ended up in the US group, right?
yeah.
Which would have made the US group all of a sudden really hard because it's like, great. It's like we talked about hockey before. It's like, you don't, a number eight team could have had a pretty lousy regular season, But if that team is
Just
the
catch you.
Oilers, yeah, you don't want catch
Yeah,
lightning in a bottle. You don't want to play them
yeah,
in the first
yeah,
round or even later. You're like, oh boy. So it's interesting what could happen. So look, there's still a lot of variables out there. The groups are made. The 8 groups are set, but there's still a couple of teams that need to qualify, 4 more teams, and then June 11th you have the opening game in Mexico City, and then it's a 5-week extravaganza. Everyone knows what the World Cup is. I think the World Cup is the biggest sporting event in the world, but I think it will be made even bigger by the fact that most of the games are going to be played in the U.S. And anything that happens in the U.S. is magnified, and people who are not soccer fans are World Cup
yeah.
fans.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I would probably fit that description. I'm not necessarily following soccer all the time, uh, but when the World Cup was played, I watch it. I watch it, and I'll
Right,
probably watch even more, being here that we're one of the host countries.
right.
Is that a rule too? If you're the host country, you automatically qualify. Is that how that works, or
Yeah, so the
not
U.S.
necessarily?
Yeah, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico automatically
Yeah.
qualified.
Okay.
That's
That's
a
what
that's a
I thought. I wanted
yeah,
to check.
yeah. The positive on that is like, well, yeah, you host it, so you have to be there. But the negative is you don't play a lot of competitive games leading up to it. So Brazil and Argentina and all these countries had to slog it out to get to
Yeah.
the show. The US didn't have to play games that meant
Yeah.
much. A lot of friendlies, exhibition games. It's hard to
Yeah.
create chemistry. It's hard to create competitiveness there. So there's a
They're not gonna
disadvantage
be
to
as
that.
battle tested as some of these
Potentially,
other.
potentially not. Now you're hoping that, in essence, a national team in soccer is basically like your all-star team. Any American playing anywhere in the world, as long as they're an American citizen, can play for the US. So it's the coach's job to go out and say, you know what? Who are my best 26 guys? Who are the best players that are American in the world? And, the best American player right now is Christian Pulisic, who actually plays in
Yeah,
Italy. He plays for AC Milan, and which is in of itself an amazing thing to have an American player playing professional soccer in Italy. So that tells you where American players have gone, how far we've come as a
yeah,
country. And, 25 years ago, 30 years ago at the World Cup in 94, most of those guys were college guys. They didn't play for anybody,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So a lot's changed.
So you mentioned tickets, and you mentioned like speculating with maybe a Canada Italy matchup early
Yeah.
in Toronto. You mentioned tickets, kind of crazy stuff going on with tickets and getting them and the prices. Kind of, I told you kind of to save it when you were going to tell me, but I said, hey, let's save it for the show. So what's going on when it comes to buying and being able to buy these tickets so you can watch these matches?
Yeah. So it's been a bit of a disaster for a couple of reasons. One is that soccer is a global sport. So people around the world are not just consumers of soccer, they understand the game, but they also know that in Spain or in Italy or in Brazil, they're pretty affordable, to go to see a World Cup in those countries. But even just regular league games, we're talking about 60, 70, $80 a ticket is considered a lot of money in some countries. In the US, we have to understand that people are willing to pay a premium to go to events. And I saw this a couple of years ago. Everyone here knows what happened with Taylor Swift, right? The mania around Taylor Swift and the ticket prices. I mean, so much so that it became a congressional investigation. So when that happened a couple of years ago, I remember saying to myself, wait until the World Cup gets here. Because if anything's bigger than Taylor Swift, it's the World Cup. Okay. And the World Cup came, and everyone around the world, it's not just Americans who want to buy tickets. People around the world want to buy tickets because they'll fly anywhere. If the World Cup was in at the North Pole, people would fly to the North Pole to watch it. It's that popular. Okay. But people are not willing to spend what's the cost of these tickets. Face value for some of these tickets, we're talking about 2,000, $3,000 for a group stage game when the price for that should be basically $60. And it's not $60. It's
Who
300.
who who's in charge of the original ticket sale? I know a lot of these are
FIFA.
maybe on
Yeah,
sec.
FIFA. So
Is
FIFA
so
controls. Yeah.
who's at fault? Is it their fault for
Yeah,
not?
it's FIFA. FIFA has control, and FIFA's figured out, hey, you know what? Americans are willing to pay money, so we can. It's a cash grab for us. We can charge whatever we want, and people will buy. Now, people around the world are like, wait, why are these tickets $300 when The finalists should be $300, not a group stage game that has very little meaning or could have very little meaning. So FIFA has also created a portal where you can resell your tickets, and when you resell your tickets, they take 15%. So FIFA makes out like a bandit here. Not only that have they escalated the prices. I mean, they're charging $100 for parking passes. Okay, and the secondary market is even worse. They're selling tickets for 5,000, 10,000, $20,000. Okay, to go see a final, a quarterfinal, a semifinal. People in the New Jersey area, because the final will be on July 19th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. People are Airbnbs for that weekend are $15,000 a night. Now, will they get that money? Maybe not. But people are out, hotel rooms in New York are $2,000 a night that weekend because everyone knows you want to be at the
Yeah.
biggest game on earth. It happens every 4 years. We'll charge whatever we want. Now, will they get those prices? We don't know. But if you get a France Argentina final, you may get people who are crazy enough. I mean, 4 years ago in Qatar, and I was there are
Yeah.
people from Argentina that flew to Qatar, no ticket. They're just like, I want to be here. There are people that told me they sold their car to go there. I mean, so we can laugh about it. It's funny.
Yeah.
My fear is that the real fans will get shut out and
Yeah.
that people around the world will do anything to get there and they'll sell off their car. They'll
And
they'll they'll max out their
the brokers
yeah,
will
they'll max out their credit
will
card, whatever they gotta
yeah,
do to get there because it's every 4 years. It's a religion to these people. It's crazy, but I worry that FIFA is taking advantage of that because they
yeah,
realize the American market is and look, let's be honest, having the World Cup in America is great because we have great roads and great hotels and great facilities, and I mean, who doesn't wanna come here on vacation and watch a couple of soccer games, right? It's
well, listen,
nice.
people wanna come here not for even soccer matches, they
Right.
just wanna come in.
Yeah.
There's a reason for
Yeah,
that.
exactly, and so FIFA knows. I mean, this past summer, they had the FIFA Club World Cup, you might have heard of that, where you had all these club
Yeah,
teams playing for because basically it was a dry run. It was like they wanted to see could the stadiums hold up? Could the US host a large scale event? Give it a bit of a dry run, and they did fine. I mean, there were some issues with, the ticket prices because the ticket prices were basically the demand. If demand went up, the price went up. If the demand went down, the
yeah,
price went down. So some World Cup games, the prices kind of flatlined. But for some games, like in the group stage, in New York especially, there's France Senegal and France Norway. Those are two big games that are happening in at MetLife in the group stage, and the tickets for that are in the thousands already. Even though face value it's about 300, which is already a lot of money. But the brokers now, because once the schedule came out, so just so you're aware and the listeners are aware, people were buying tickets back in September. They were buying tickets to games they didn't even know who was going to play. People were paying $300.
speculation, just
Yeah,
like
people were
it's like
paying. Yeah, people were paying $300 to watch game 46 at MetLife Stadium. Who's going to play in it? We don't know. Just to
just
have a
scratching
ticket.
a lottery ticket, just
Exactly.
scratching the
So,
yeah,
so the whole thing from the very beginning, and this back started back in September with what they call the Visa presale. So you have to have a Visa card to be able to buy tickets, and they've had various stages. Now, in New York, we have a new mayor, Zoran Mamdani. He's a pretty big soccer fan. He's complained about ticket prices. In the past at other World Cups, FIFA would give tickets away to local people like school children and because they need to fill the stadiums, right?
yeah,
And it's also a goodwill gesture. But in America, between the visitors and then we forget how many people in this country are soccer fans. And if they're not soccer
yeah,
fans, if Italy's playing at Giant Stadium, you're gonna go. Even if you're, half Italian and you're like, hey, I don't watch soccer every week, but this is the my country of my people. I want to go watch it. Right.
yeah,
So there's a lot of national pride that's attached to these teams. So
yeah.
FIFA knows all this. And so hopefully things kind of loosen a bit. Maybe there'll be games where there'll be fewer seats. Maybe they give some away. I still am hoping because back in '94 they did give out free tickets to soccer clubs and soccer camps, and but at the time FIFA was worried that the U.S. wasn't a good enough market for soccer. I think we were able to prove them wrong in '94. And '94 is still considered the most successful World Cup ever because basically every game was a sellout. Will that happen this time? We shall see. 104 games is a lot. considering that the last World Cup was 64 games. So
Well, I would.
yeah,
Tell me if you agree with this. I think there'll be sellouts now. Will they get all their what their asking price like right off the top? Maybe
maybe
not.
not,
They'll have to
maybe
come
not.
down. But I
Yeah,
think there should be the demand should be enough where everything has a price at some. You
yeah.
know.
But Germany, Curacao isn't going to get the same price as France,
Yeah.
Norway. It's just
Yeah.
not going to happen. And then once you get to the knockout stage, all those games really matter. I think the knockout stage is where the money really is. And just so you know, and the listeners know, Mexico and Canada will host games as well. But once you get to the knockout round, all those games are in the US. So the
Yeah.
US is hosting the majority of these games.
Yeah.
And that way it's considered very much a US led World Cup. But because you have so many teams and so many games, you really got to spread it out across Canada and Mexico. The truth is, though, if you had just kept it in the US could have hosted those many games. There's a lot of cities that did not get games. Washington,
Yeah.
D.C. is not hosting the World Cup. Chicago is not hosting the World Cup. Las
Is that they
Vegas is not
weren't
hosting.
selected? Were they not selected, or they didn't put in a bit like they didn't
So
try?
okay, so most cities put in bids and didn't get them. Chicago didn't actually put in a bid, but Washington D.C. it was actually Washington, Baltimore. They wouldn't have the games in Baltimore. They did not get.
Yeah.
They were able to get games, but there was a lot of maneuvering. For example, Jerry Jones really wanted to get games in Dallas, and he got them. And Dallas is it's a great stadium. These are all NFL stadiums, so it's a great stadium in
Yeah.
Dallas. Dallas wanted to host the final, and they didn't get it, but they also wanted to be able to have games where teams didn't have to travel all over the country. So for
Yeah.
example, there's games in Boston, New York, and Philly. So you can keep teams pretty close. They can travel by train and not create because we have time differences here. Players would be jet
Yeah.
lagged. But for example, Boston was not an original team that original city anyone thought was going to get the World Cup. But Bob Kraft put a little pressure on
Mhm.
FIFA, and they're like, "All right, Bob, we'll make this work for you. We'll pick Boston and not some other place, right?"
Yeah.
So a lot of these NFL owners see the potential in soccer. Some of them own MLS teams. They definitely want their NFL stadiums to host World Cup games. So, Jerry Jones is friendly with FIFA. Bob Kraft is friendly with FIFA. The people that own the Giants are friendly with FIFA, and MetLife got chosen to host the final, which I think is fair because I can't think of a more international city than New York, and to host
Yeah.
a final would be amazing. People should remember it back in '94, the World Cup final was
Yeah.
held at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. So,
Yeah.
um, so New York didn't host the final. They hosted a
Yeah, it's
semifinal.
West Coast, and now it's East Coast turn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought Dallas might get it because I still think in the mind of many Europeans, they don't know America. They just know New York, LA,
Yeah.
Miami,
Yeah.
and maybe Dallas, right? They don't really
Yeah.
know other cities. They never heard of Philadelphia
Yeah.
or Boston or Kansas City, for example, which will be hosting games as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about you got your traditional favorites, right? You kind of I don't want to say handicapping the event, but like who are obviously you got your leaders of each of these groups, right? But
Right.
as someone who knows a lot of these rosters, who is it going to be traditional powerhouses that we should expect? I know you mentioned, for everyone here in the U.S. That we got a pretty good draw with our group. We might be
Yeah.
able to fight our way out of that and survive in advance. But
Right.
who are like coming in? Who are the favorites in your mind? Is it kind of the chalk, what we would normally say, or not necessarily?
Yeah, so I'd put them in tiers. So I would say the teams that are super favorite would be Argentina, defending champion. Then you have France, which they were runners up last time. Spain, which are the current European champions, and then you have England and Brazil. Okay. So these are the teams we're looking at that are in the favorite category. Then you have the dark horse category. It's like, oh, what's a team that could emerge that no one expects? In the dark horse category, I look at Morocco, who finished fourth last time, surprise fourth. They're a very good team. A lot of their players play in Europe. The Netherlands, which is another team that finished runners up twice in history, the World Cup. Oh, three times, I should say. Three times runners up, never won a World Cup. They're always in play. A team like Germany, who's been traditionally very good, but they've been on a bit of a low last couple of years. They could emerge. So you're looking at the usuals with maybe a sprinkling of some newer teams. Let's not forget the last two World Cups. Croatia did very well. Croatia got to the final in 2018 and then got pretty deep uh, semifinals in 2022. But they were an aging team. But that's a team that emerged out of nowhere. And then, it goes through cycles, of course. And because the World Cup is every 4 years, it's hard to build momentum year after year, right? So you can't build. It's not like a playoff team that you build momentum. You rebuild. You don't rebuild. I mean, you have to just hope that your country is producing young players, young enough talent, and that the coach, who has all the power in the world to pick the players he wants, and creates enough team chemistry over the 4 year period between World Cups to be able to then field a team for 5 weeks. And you got to win 9 games to get to the final and win the whole thing. And
Yeah.
you can get hot, like in the knockouts, you can get hot and you can get to the final. It can happen. But the World Cup has only had 8 winners in 96 years. So it's not easy to win the
Yeah.
World Cup. Only 8 countries have ever won it. So it's
Yeah.
it's a very exclusive club. And so I mentioned these teams. The teams I mentioned in the favorite category, I mentioned
Right.
Brazil, Argentina, France, Spain. These countries have all won a World Cup at least once. So
Yeah.
it's going to be the usual suspects. And the truth is, you almost want the usual suspects because
Yeah.
it does make for a better show. And it will be, I should point out, probably the last World Cup for Messi, the last World Cup for Ronaldo. These are guys who've been playing for 20 plus
Yeah.
years. And so that'll be interesting to see
Do you
those
think
guys.
let me ask you this. You can't answer for them, but just playing, putting on your speculators. Do you think, I know Messi kind of at one point was like saying that's probably it. Do you think the fact that it's here in the United States kind of influenced their decision to give it one more go, this go round, or not?
I
Not,
think
not
I I,
really.
I think for Messi, yes, because Messi plays here in Miami in the
Yeah.
US and he's made the US his home and he's been extraordinarily good at 36 years old. He can still, breeze past
Yeah.
20-year-olds with ease. Now people would say, well, he's doing that in America. I still think if he was playing in Europe, he could probably play at a pretty high level. So, I mean, he reminds me, him being here reminds me of when Pele came here in the 70s and when Beckham came
Yeah.
in the 2000s. You have this idea of like, we have the best player in the world and he's coming to a market, the US, and he's helping to grow the game. So I do think he wants to finish that out. He wants to play at a World Cup for Argentina in the US and then maybe finish his 2 years in Miami and then maybe retire at 39 years old and 40 years old and he can retire. Ronaldo's already at 40, 41. He's already pretty old for soccer anyway. But
Yeah.
the guy reminds me of Tom Brady. He's in great physical
Yeah.
shape. He's got great mentality. But it'll be interesting to see, can he play for Portugal? Can he start? Will he be on the bench? He's not a team player. You know,
Yeah.
Ronaldo is very much into himself. Can he
Yeah.
sacrifice himself for the team? If he gets subbed out, will he throw a tantrum? Like, we'll see can he play the full 90 minutes? Maybe not. But I think it'll be interesting to see what he can do. And come spring, the US will play Portugal in a pre-World Cup friendly, as they call it, a game that's an exhibition
Yeah.
game. So be curious to see Ronaldo come here. Ronaldo did recently. Now Ronaldo also plays in Saudi Arabia. So Ronaldo and Messi both left European soccer a while ago because they
Yeah.
realize they're getting older, they're getting slower, and there's a lot more money to be had outside of Europe,
Yeah.
in this case, in the Middle East, and they want to be ambassadors. So I think they're playing one more time, just one more go at it, and
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. I think if you remember 4 years ago when Argentina won the World Cup, that was an amazing World Cup final. Remember 3-3, they went to penalty kicks,
Yeah.
and Messi not only won the World Cup for the first time, but I think pretty much crowned himself the
That
GOAT.
that game had me. Listen, I'm not a soccer guy per se, but that had me on the edge of my seat. Like
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself, it stinks that someone's going to lose this game.
right,
Like both these teams should win. Like I don't, you can't split a trophy in half, or
right,
but like I felt bad. Like I didn't have a particular rooting interest, but I knew one team was going to lose, and whoever it was going to be, I was going to feel bad, like because it was just so enthralling, and they were leaving it all out there.
yeah,
Just momentum swings one
yes,
way, back the other way, and I'm like, it's too bad someone's got to feel the pain of not coming out of this game victorious. But that's the beauty of it too.
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
No, and that's absolutely true, and but when you get to that level, you get to a final, you want that game to be that game. You want there to
Yeah,
be, because these are the 2 best teams. Now, oftentimes, you don't get that in soccer because teams are tired, they've played 7, 8 games in a tight window, and also all the pressure. Sometimes the championship game isn't always the best game of the tournament, but it's nice when it works out that way, and we should
yeah,
point out that on the other side of Messi was Kylian Mbappe, who will be back for France. He's much younger at 24. He could break a few World Cup records. I totally see him, doing something with France. Maybe he already won a World Cup in 2018 when he was like basically 19 years old. So he's already won a World Cup at a very young age. So these are
yeah.
these are these are players who are primed, and in these players I'm mentioning, Ronaldo, Messi, Mbappe.
Who?
These are
Well,
these
what?
yeah, these are all players who have the biggest card values, anyways, in the
Yeah, they're
soccer
the
hobby.
legends of the
Yeah,
game, and
right,
even Mbappe, even at
sure, a
a
young
very
age.
young age of 24, is like I know who he is. A lot of people know who. Is there? Who's the hot name? That's the real young player to watch.
Yeah.
In his teens, let's say.
There
Is
is yeah,
there
yeah,
somebody?
yeah, there's a player that plays for Spain named Lamine Yamal,
Yep.
he's only 18
Yep.
years old. He was 16 when they won the European Championship with Spain. He was 16. He was a kid, and he was playing like he was 25. So he's 18 now, 19. I think he's gonna have a great World Cup. He plays for Spain. So Spain,
Yeah.
again, one of the favorites. He's another name you see a lot at card shows. People like to speculate on his rookie cards, which are fairly new, and he is a great player. You just tell by the way they move, the way they run, the way they play, the maturity they bring. And in soccer, you have a 16, 17-year-old playing against 29-year-olds, and he's gliding past these guys. So
Yeah.
some guys have something special. Again, like in hockey, though, these guys are scoring goals. They're the alpha male. They're the guys on the team that everybody wants to be. And so, it's not a goalkeeper, it's not a defender, it's the guy scoring the goals. Again, this is what gets people excited in the hobby. It's what gets people excited in sports and soccer. He's putting up big goals, he's doing great things, he's making great moves. And so he's the one younger player, even though he's been playing for a few years now. It'll be his first World Cup though. So people are gonna really want his World Cup sticker,
Yeah.
his first sticker, they're gonna want all that. And look, if Spain go far, win a World Cup even, then I think he's going to be the next Mbappe.
Yeah.
He'll slide right in there in terms of popularity.
Now we know, like the soccer market, the soccer hobby market's going to get a bump from the World Cup. I think even more so being here on North American soil in Canada and Mexico, but having it here since the last World Cup. How would you describe a synopsis of what the soccer market, hobby wise, has done? Obviously you get the World Cup bump, but how has it been between last World Cup and leading into this World Cup, if you will?
Yeah. So back in 2018, there was really no soccer card market. There were soccer cards, and they were okay, and there were stickers. The stickers are what people wanted in Europe anyway. COVID, soccer blew up. Then the World Cup in 2022 was in the middle of the COVID thing. So they kind of had a big bump. And I want to say that it was a bump that kind of stabilized, but it did put soccer from being almost non-existent to being in a place where any show I go to, whether it's a small show, a regional show, the national, the expo, whatever, soccer's a big deal. Like there's soccer only dealers. Even people that sell multi-sport will sell soccer cards, the big names, right? So soccer's become more integrated, I think, into the hobby more so than even Formula One, which kind of had that big spike and then kind of, I don't know, I think it kind of died, right? But soccer is there. I think when you talk about the hobby, you're talking about 5 sports really. You're talking about the 4 major American sports, and soccer, I think, is in that category now. And you have card shows now all over Europe. You have the London card show, which I went to a couple of years ago. You have shows
Yeah,
in all over Europe. Europeans now are buying soccer cards. Topps is making soccer cards. Fanatics is super interested in soccer. They would love to have the FIFA license. So I don't know if you know, but Fanatics Fest this year will take place during the World Cup final weekend, which will be in New York. So, and
yeah,
FIFA had a huge booth at the last a Fanatics Fest last year. Um, the one negative of that is that it puts Fanatics Fest and the National literally within 2.5 weeks of each other, which is not ideal, right? But I don't think
Yeah.
Fanatics cares about the National or anybody
Yeah.
else. They just care about what they're doing, and they care about working with FIFA and working with other partners. All right. So I say that to say that's how big soccer has become. That Fanatics Fest is like, yeah, we'd love to have our show in June every year in New York, but we're going to do it in July this year because the World Cup is final is there, and they're going to have a viewing party, and it's going to be FIFA is going to have a big booth again. And it's really going to be fully integrated. So if you're coming to New York for the final, and you're in New York that weekend, you can pop into Fanatics Fest and maybe buy merchandise, memorabilia, soccer cards. That's all part of it. So Topps is super interested in it. Panini still has the World Cup license. They still have the FIFA license. So they're going to produce Panini Prism and a bunch of other, Donruss, and they're going to produce a bunch of cards this year that are going to have a lot of relevance, I think, because it's a World Cup year. There's definitely a bump that is already starting to emerge, and then people are going back and trying to buy the old stuff. They try to buy the Messi rookies, the Ronaldo rookies. I think the Messi rookie card has become almost as iconic as the Gretzky rookie or the Mickey Mantle. If you're a soccer fan or a multi-sport collector, you want the Messi rookie because he's got a
Yeah.
card. It's from 2004. It came out in Spain. It was put out by Panini. But there's lots of examples of it. I mean, every show I go to, I inevitably run into this Messi rookie card. It's not hard to find, but the prices have been going up, 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 and the better the grade, the better it is. I still have a fantasy that one day someone is gonna like find in a warehouse in Spain like 100,000 of these Messi cards and go, oh look, there's a ton of these sitting in a box. And will that devalue it? I don't know. But because it's European, because it's only issued in Spain, it's hard to find in America. This is a card that you literally 10 years ago didn't even know existed. And
Yeah.
now every golden auction, you see it.
Yeah.
Every article about soccer cards, you see that card photographed in there. So it has become, I think the Messi rookie is in the same collection as the Mickey Mantle rookie and the Gretzky rookie and the Tom Brady rookie. It's like the goats. If you want the goats, you have to go out and get that card.
Well, if you ever want to sell one of the 10 you have, let me know.
I luckily have one, but I bought it back in 2018 when
Yeah.
it was worth hundreds of dollars. Now it's worth thousands of dollars. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where I enjoyed buying soccer in the 2017, 2018 because nobody was really buying. And
Yeah.
now I think soccer may be even hotter than hockey in terms of cards
Yeah.
because the people that collect soccer cards are really rabid, and that fan base is growing larger and larger. And like I said, you have guys at the national now. For example, at the last national where I saw you, because soccer collectors didn't think there was enough soccer at the national, they actually had their own show in Chicago the same weekend.
Yeah.
So at night. So
Yeah.
I went to it one night and I couldn't believe there were like 50 vendor tables selling soccer. And it was held at an indoor soccer facility about 30 minutes away. I took an Uber, I went over there, and it was cool. It was like, wow, it was like fake turf, tables everywhere. And so there is definitely a community that's grown. You would not have seen that 5 years ago. Not at all.
Yeah. Do you think, obviously, there's going to be a bump with it being here on North American soil? Do you think it'll be a bigger one just on that alone, just from that alone, comparatively speaking to the last World Cup?
I
And a
Yeah,
two-pronged
yeah.
question: do we know where the next one is after this one, or not yet?
We do. So the next one will be in so I'll take that question first. So the next World Cup will be in 2030, and that's going to be the 100-year anniversary of the World Cup. So that's going to be a big deal in of itself. Okay. Now the
Yeah.
first World Cup was held in Uruguay, very small Latin American country, so they could not host a World Cup that's this big. They just couldn't. Right. So what
Yeah.
they're going to do is they're going to have a few first round games in Uruguay, Argentina, and Peru as an homage to that first World Cup.
Yeah. That's cool.
Then they're going to have the rest of the tournament in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. So yes, the next World Cup will be hosted by 6 countries. Okay, it
Wow.
sounds
Yeah.
and then the next World Cup after that, 2034, will be held entirely in Saudi Arabia. Which, if you know anything about Saudi Arabia, they've gotten into the sports market
Yeah.
big time,
Yeah.
soccer and the
Yeah.
golf and everything. Now, we don't know this yet, but I am already speculating that that World Cup will be like Qatar. It'll be too hot to have in the summer, and they'll have another
Yeah.
Winter World Cup, and which we all lived through in November and December of 2022. And ultimately, I didn't think it was that bad watching soccer on Thanksgiving. I got to tell you, I got to be honest. So
Yeah.
the European leagues didn't like having a month break in between, but
We
you know
could
what?
watch football and then football.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, which people did. You I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember, but on Black Friday, US England on Black Friday was
Yeah.
pretty fun game, and
Yeah.
it was 0-0. And to this day, England has never beaten the US at a World Cup. So
Wow.
yeah, so we have so the next 2 World Cups are spoken for, then after that, we don't know, but the World Cup is
Yeah.
becoming harder and harder to host because it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's really hard for countries to do it alone because, the US is a big country, but and Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia is a big country, but a country like Italy or Germany or England couldn't host a World Cup that was that big.
Yeah.
So, I'd be curious to see what happens with the World Cup. There's also speculation that the World Cup might go from 48 to 64 teams.
That was my next question. Like, are we going to see
So
more expansion?
it's possible. And then to pick up the other question, we could see more expansion in the future, which who knows how well people will take that. The original idea was not to expand the World Cup, but to have it every 2 years. And people really
Yeah.
didn't like that. And so FIFA was like, okay, we
Yeah.
won't have it every 2 years, but we're going to make it bigger. So people were like,
Yeah.
okay. The other question you had, will the World Cup give soccer cards a bigger bump? I think because they're held in
Being
this.
being here,
Yeah,
being
yeah.
here
I
rather
think
than at a
I think
yeah. Go ahead.
yes. Now I think the World Cup could be held anywhere and people would still watch it on TV.
Yeah.
The World Cup is really a television event at this point, like the Olympics. So it doesn't matter where you hold it, but having it here does matter because Panini and Upper Deck and Tops, all these companies are going to try to produce as much soccer as they can just to meet the
Yeah.
demand. You might get new collectors, and you have to remember back in '94, Upper Deck they put out that '94 World Cup set that has become kind of iconic among soccer fans because it was kind of the first real World Cup card set, and Upper Deck put that out, and which produced some pretty famous cards of some pretty good soccer players. But in addition to that, they made these special cards of Wayne Gretzky and Michael Jordan. There's a Michael Jordan card dunking a soccer ball. Like there is a Joe
Yeah.
Montana soccer card. There's a Reggie Jackson. These are all guys that Upper Deck had under contract back in the '90s, right? So.
Yeah.
So that set became iconic as a result of the fact that World Cup was being held here, and Upper Deck was like, "Well, we got to put out a set, because the World Cup is here. It's going to be a big deal." So I think that will happen. I mean, Panini America is already positioning itself to try to. I mean, I noticed 4 years ago with the stickers, literally every place I went to in New York City, even Walgreens had the stickers. And before that, they never had them. So I have to imagine that the World Cup being here, the buzz of it being just next door is going to be huge, especially if you live in a big American city and you're going to see people in the street celebrating, you're going to see people at bars. It's going to be it's kinda
Wearing
like
their
yeah,
jerseys and
exactly. It's gonna be like
doing
March
their cheer.
Madness on steroids, I
Yeah.
think. It's gonna be
Yeah.
huge, and I think it's going to have help the hobby because naturally, young people, older people might say, "Oh, I'm really enjoying this sport. I do baseball cards. Maybe I could do soccer now. I can collect some of my favorite players I'm watching at this tournament," right? And, so I think there'll be a lot of product out there for everybody come the summer.
So the last time you were on, which was like you said a
Yeah.
while ago, too long. Any traction on my rule suggestion? One of my pet peeves is like a guy gets like tripped and anyone can shoot the penalty shot. Like I think it's
Yes.
whoever. I think it should be whoever whoever's the penalty occurs on has to take the penalty shot. You can't just have like Messi take every one. Like
Right.
like in basketball, if you foul, you always want to foul the guy who has the worst free throw percentage because there's more likely he's going to miss. I think it should be like that in soccer. Like that guy has to be the one that tries to kick the penalty shot one on one with the goalie.
It would so so no, there's been 0 traction on what you said, though though I will admit when you mentioned that on our the last time I was on, which was a long time ago, but I do remember you saying that, and a light bulb went off in my head. I thought, "You know what? I never heard anyone say that." And I've never heard anyone say it since, but I think it's a genius idea because the probability of a kicker scoring is very high. It's like 60-70% in favor of the
Yeah,
kicker. So it's almost like a goal. Now we've seen players miss and we've seen goalies make saves, but the odds are stacked against the goalie, right? So it would be amazing if someone gets tripped and let's say they're not a penalty kick specialist. Okay, so if they have to take the kick, it makes it more exciting, number 1. So I like your idea, number 1. Number 2,
Well, that
someone
here's the other
yeah,
thing, real quick too.
yeah,
And listen, Messi and Ronaldo and the greats of the game
right.
of soccer are great without. I'm not saying they're not great, but this is some of the numbers get inflated because these are
Yeah.
counted as
Yeah,
obviously goals.
yeah, it's
So like,
padded. Sure.
yeah, it's like an empty net goal in hockey. Like
Right.
he scored,
But it
but
wasn't
like
hard. It wasn't hard.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was like it was at the end of the game. They had to trying to get an extra guy.
And they pulled the
And I
goalie,
get
right.
the goalie's there, but he's getting a stop play shot, right?
Right.
Like so, they might have 400 goals in their career. How many were like like
Right.
to me? I take more pride, or I think it's more exciting an in play goal where it's set up and the guy
Sure.
passes it or heads it and then or bicycle kicks it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I
Right.
just think
They're
like
all worth the same.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think like if you're the one that like gets tripped and you do a face plant, you should at least get to reap the rewards of drawing that penalty.
I've seen games where someone gets tripped and then every team's got that one guy who kicks the penalty kicks, and usually it's like a
Yeah,
Messi or Ronaldo, but I've seen games where players have gotten into fights because they're like, "I wanna kick it." "No, you kick." It's like because they want the goal or maybe they're in a
yeah,
scoring drought and it'll maybe help them. So you're right, the
yeah,
idea that you're committed to the guy that got tripped, that would be fun, and that's never been floated, but I still think it's a good idea because it would be interesting. And you're right, the Messis of the world wouldn't be able to pad their numbers, but on top of that, you'd have some, a penalty kick wouldn't be such a sure thing if some defender got tripped in the box and it's like, oh, he's got to take the kick, and he's a little wobbly on kick. Because some players don't do this. It's not their specialty. They
yeah.
don't do PKs, right?
Well,
I
it's
mean,
like
even
in hockey, right?
yeah,
If a guy's got a breakaway and the defenseman trips him,
it's a
he
penalty.
has to take the shot. They don't like
Yeah,
if it
right.
happens to Oilers, McDavid doesn't come out and like,
And
okay,
right.
it's me. Get off the ice. I got this. You
Yeah,
know,
it's almost like a pinch hitter or like a pinch runner. It's like,
yeah,
oh, I'm just gonna swap them. I'm gonna put my best guy to take it. It's interesting, and FIFA does do experiments at youth tournaments and minor tournaments with rules. A lot of the rules are surrounding, offside and using video review, and that's become a big, more technology in the
yep,
game. For example, FIFA's doing this thing where they're going to take a body scan of all the players who are going to play. This way, when they're offside, they can tell, given
wow,
that body type. I mean, so AI is going to be part of the World Cup. There's going to be a lot of technology. So FIFA's looking like all the leagues. How do we integrate more technology? Your rule change is a good idea, but it's like really old school. It's like, oh, well, let's just have this, and maybe that would be a fun experiment. I'd love to see how that would look over time. But no traction. Even though I will say it stuck with me because it was like, no, I never heard that before. It's actually a pretty good idea. Maybe because you're not a habitual viewer, you came in with
yeah.
fresh eyes. You're like, wait,
Like if I'm playing soccer, even like just rec league, like
right,
we're not even. I'm not a prof, but
right,
I'm just playing rec league, and I'm driving towards the goalkeeper,
right.
and I'm getting my
And you get
hopes
chopped
up,
down. Yeah,
hey, I got a shot here, and then some dude like slide tackles me, and I go head over heels, and the ref calls, a penalty kick. I want to kick that thing as long as I can get up and still breathe. I want to kick that thing. I don't want Mike to come off, come
right.
from whoever on the field or the sideline, and I got this, Newman, get out the way. Like, dude, I just got killed. I've just caught my breath. I want to kick this thing in here. Like,
Yeah,
why do you get to do it? Like
you
that's
know,
maybe it's the hockey, the with the penalty
basketball. Yeah,
shot and
yeah,
all. Yeah,
and
you
basketball
you
free
you
throws.
foul
Yeah,
that guy. He goes to the line. Not the best free throw shooter on the team. You
right,
know, on
right,
technical fouls, the best free throw. But if it's just a normal foul, you
right.
have to shoot him. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
where I guess I'm just traditional. I always thought it was like that guy got tripped and kicked and half punched and bit, and then this guy comes in and gets to kick it. Like, come
right.
on, man,
Yeah,
that's my shot. You
yeah.
know,
No, absolutely. It's an interesting thing, and I do think it's funny you remember that from our last conversation because it was something that I think is interesting. It would be fun to see, how I
I don't even
guess
compromise, Clemente. Do it for the first half. In the second half, you can have in the second half or overtimes, anyone can kick the penalty kick. But in the
like in
first half,
yeah,
if it
like in
happens in the first half, the guy who gets the
like
foul
in
on him gets has to
yeah,
kick
like
it.
in baseball where like the manager gets a challenge, he can challenge a
Yeah,
call or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'll compromise. FIFA, meet me halfway. First half, that guy's got to kick the ball, whoever it is. And if it's Messi who gets tripped up, then it's or like
I
it's who
mean,
it is.
generally, just to put a fine point on this, generally the attacking players who kick the PKs, they're the ones that get tripped in the box anyway because they're charging towards the
Yeah,
goal. It's
yeah,
unlikely the
yeah,
defender would do it though. You do have defenders who do play up the wings, but more
yeah.
likely it will be an attacking player that gets chopped down anyway. So it often works out, but doesn't always work out
All right. Well, maybe next World Cup we'll see.
you could put
Well,
in your
Clemente,
you could put in your petition with FIFA.
yeah, I'm sure that will be right. It'll be right at the forefront of the paperwork they're looking through. Well, listen, you wrote the book. Uh, you've updated it. Well, factoring in, this World Cup. Talk a little bit about the book, where people can get it.
Yeah,
Again, a lot of history. I actually read. I didn't read the new version. I read the old one. It's not that old, but the
well, right,
original, I should
yeah.
say, and like just full of history. And I'm not what you would call your typical soccer fan, and it's just as a sports fan, I love the history of sports just in general,
Right.
and you really covered it. Not that I've read a ton of soccer, but you covered really every aspect, and you did it in a way like it's not a small book, but you did it in a way it's concise, and you kept it interesting. Talk about like the update where people can buy the book and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the book is called The World Cup: A History of the Planet's Biggest Sporting Event, 2026 edition. So that's the new title for it. And yeah, it covers every World Cup from 1930 to the present. It really has a big focus on not just the games and the players, but also the politics of the time, what was happening in the world and how
Yeah,
that affected the game. And then, the countries it was being played in, that always has a factor in it. The new edition has two added chapters. One is on the 2022 World Cup, the one in Qatar with that epic final. I was there at
yeah,
that game, so I have a lot of firsthand reporting in there. So I have that in the book, and then I have a chapter that pretty much previews this World Cup. I have a pretty funny anecdote of the FIFA president this past summer during an encounter the media had with him at Trump Tower in New York, and I was there for it. So it's got some funny anecdotes in there about that meeting, which was a little unusual. And that was right on the eve of the Club World Cup that I told you about last July in New York. So it's got some firsthand reporting in it. A lot of stuff has happened in the last 4 years, of course, soccer wise, that really matters. And there's a bit of a preview on the US, Mexico, and Canada. I couldn't preview all the countries, of course, because we didn't know the countries that were going to qualify. So I was in the same
yeah,
predicament. Only my deadline was much sooner than Panini's. So that's what the book is really about. You can get it on Amazon. It's currently in pre-sale. The book comes out March 19th.
yeah,
The World Cup is June 11th. So bit of a buffer. But if you want to order it now on Amazon, you can. You can do a search,
yeah,
look it up, order it, and you'll get it in the mail on March 19th, right around St. Patrick's Day. And it's a good book for as a gift for Father's Day. If you want to read about the World Cup, if you're a collector, for example, and you don't know who to collect or why you should collect somebody, reading a little history of the game might help, and also watching the World Cup and reading a few chapters of the last few World Cups heading into it gives you a little bit of some groundwork. And like you said, the book is concise because I could have written a 2,000-page book, but nobody wants that, right? So so the goal was to keep it as tight as
yeah.
possible. We're covering almost 100 years here of
Well,
soccer. It's a lot.
kudos because
So
you did a great job, and I like, we forget that's what happens in life affects what happens in sports, right? And
right,
how some of these wars and what's going. You mentioned like politics
sure,
and wars and countries who really can't stand each other would want to wipe each other off the face
right,
of the earth at the time. You
yes,
know, um, how that played into the tournament field and where games could be played or not
right,
played,
right,
or hey, if they're here we're not going to be, or that sort of thing. And sometimes we don't always think about that aspect. And
right,
just just what we're seeing today with the Olympics about to happen in the Winter Olympics for hockey,
Right.
and there's no Russian. There's not going to be a Russian entry
Right.
into the ice hockey competition, right? And it's 2026, right? This isn't
Yeah.
old school war. This is
Right. Right.
modern day, and it's still things like that still are happening. So, and I'm a history guy. I'm a history of sports.
Right.
I'm a world history guy, and so when those two kind of meld or go hand in hand, I find it very interesting. Not that you like controversy or bad things, but it is part of the fabric of how we're here, where we are today, like it or not. And I love learning about it, and like they say, you learn about. That's how we avoid future stuff, maybe from mistakes in the past. Sometimes we do learn that, and in
Right.
other instances, we repeat those.
Yeah.
I love learning about that, and then when you encompass sports in there as well, I love it even more so because it's like two check boxes for
Yeah.
me. And like I
Yeah.
said, this is not. I'm not a salesman, but you just the way you did it and the way you wrote it, you're very talented and you made it interesting. Whether you're a diehard soccer fan or a casual, which I would describe myself as. Uh, it was just very enthralling and interesting, and I kept turning pages and reading more and more. And it's important. It's important. We're here because of what happened before we got here, and I think all that stuff is important to know, and or at least to me.
Yeah, no, the goal is to always make the book accessible to everybody. But, even for myself, someone who's watched the game for decades, just being able to peel back a little bit, do some research, learn things along the way, and then share them with other people.
Yeah,
That's really what motivates me. Ultimately, I like to tell stories. That's why I write magazine stories. That's why I write newspaper stories. I work for various websites. Like to write books because I like to look at a story, find stories, and then tell these stories to other people, whether it's about
yeah,
sports or the hobby or politics or whatever it is, religion. These things all matter to us. And I agree, the World Cup is one of those events like the Olympics where it's international, encompasses lots of different cultures and
yeah,
nationalities. And ultimately, it does reflect what's happening in the world. Like you mentioned, the hockey tournament not having Russia. This has happened before in history. It'll happen again. And you're right. This is not about
yeah,
some far off place. We're talking about the present. And the World Cup doesn't have
yeah,
any political tensions at the moment, but you never know what can happen in the world. We live
yeah,
in times where
yeah.
wars can break out at any moment. So it's a great guidebook. If you're going to this World Cup, I'll leave you with this. If you're going into this World Cup this summer without ever really watching the World Cup or experiencing it, the book is really a great guide to say, you know what, let me do a little cramming before the final exam. Let me do a little reading on what's all the craziness about.
And
Why do
get
people
your juices flowing, get you hyped up
Exactly, exactly, and
for the
March is a
event.
good and March is a good time. March is about the time the hype will start building, and
Yeah.
as we get closer and closer, the hype is already building. It's been building for years now, but now that we're really in the same calendar year as the World Cup, I think the hype is here.
Yeah, when you
Um,
can start counting down days in the double and single digits, you're close. So,
yeah, for sure.
that's huge, and having it here in our home country, even cooler, right? In various cities, and Canada's not that far away. I don't know if I'm going to get to go, especially with all this price.
Yeah,
But like I'm not super far. I'm not. I never say never. I'm gonna leave the door open, but Toronto's not too far from me. I'm in Syracuse, but I'm from New York City. That's only 230, 40 miles from where I am that way. I love Boston. I just went there for the first time in September, believe it or not, and great city. So I wouldn't rule that off the table either. So
yeah,
maybe I know my son would like. I know we talked last time. My son would like to go if we can, and so I'm not closing that door. We'll see what's available and where, and
yeah,
how the dates might work and times. But if you get a chance to go, right, you don't get the World Cup all the time, obviously, and you don't get the World Cup in general. It's every 4 years, and so when it's in your country, who knows when you'll get it back again. So when it's there, you got to try to get there if you can. I mean, you went to Qatar to
right,
go see the world,
right.
right, and now it's right in our backyard, so to speak. So Um, if you get a chance to go, and it's an event. It's right. It's the Super Bowl. We talk about Super Bowl, right, in the NFL, right? People go to that event that aren't even football, like
Right.
American football fans. It's just an event
It's a
in itself.
cultural
I
event.
think the world,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the World Cup is the same
Yeah.
as that. Some people might be shaking their head. I don't really care, but it's the proof's in the pudding, right? It's called the World Cup, So and here it is on our home soil in Canada and Mexico. Some opportunities to, even if you make a vacation inside the trip to see some soccer being played as well. So there's always that aspect. So, Clemente, I appreciate you dropping some knowledge
Sure.
on me and those listening. Give out again if you want to plug where people can get the book, where people can see what you're writing and doing, and anything. Take your time. Website. The floor is yours to give out that information. I'll also put this in the show notes for you,
Okay.
episode notes as well. So even if they don't catch it verbally, they can
Yeah.
catch it in the show notes. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I think I did send you this stuff earlier, but yeah, I can be found on Twitter or X at Clemente Lisi. And then I also write for various hobby publications, including Sports Collectors Digest. You can find my stuff there. I also write for puckjunk.com. I also am a regular on Sal Barry's podcast. Hi, Sal. And then I also have my own Substack where I write about soccer at planetsoccer.substack.com. And you can hit me up on all these platforms. And of course, the book is available at Bloomsbury Publishing. It's also available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. I love to say that.
There you go. And listen, I promise it won't be through. Well, we're going to do a post World Cup sort of recap and how it went and maybe what happened with those tickets and see how
Hmm.
this all plays out and kind of do a post game, if you will. I know it's more than one game, but just post World Cup sort of recap and then even after that, I promise not to make it 3 years
Well, yeah,
between
I'll,
appearances.
I will close it off with this by saying that the World Cup final is July 19th. It is in New York. It is also the same weekend as Fanatics Fest, so I'll probably try to be at both the final and
Yeah.
Fanatics Fest. And then 2 weeks later, at the end of July, is the National in Chicago. I'll be there as well. I think I'm gonna have a really busy July, but it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And you do a great job covering it and getting that information out to everybody who maybe can't always be there as well. So, Clemente, always appreciate it. Love chopping it up with you. Thanks as always.
Thank you.